Tyron from Belltech.
Hi, I'm Joseph from Belltech.
Today we're going to talk about control arms for our OBS coilover kit. We're going to start off with the bracket that is included for the upper control arm. You want to tell us about the bracket, Joseph?
Sure. So this is the upper bracket that's going to come with your kit. So what this does is it relocates the rear mount, so the closest facing or closest to the cab, it locates that higher. So what that does, it increases your mechanical advantage over like anti-dive. So you want that anytime you're braking, so you don't have to increase spring rate or hydraulics to get the truck to support itself. We're doing that mechanically by increasing anti-dive. That'll also happen during turns, so you're not rolling as much. It doesn't affect roll center very much, but the anti-dive will reduce how much you roll.
Which the OBSs are notorious for.
Absolutely, those trucks are notorious just because of their factory arm angles, their factory spring rates, and it was limitations to the time.
All right, let's jump into the upper control arm, the features of it.
Okay, I'll start with probably the most obvious and different from your OEM upper control arm is going to be the frame side mounts. So we did this so that one, you're not dealing with the rubber that's associated with the stock upper control arm, but also you're not dealing with all the maintenance requirements of a normal open Heim. So this is all sealed. You don't have to worry about doing any sort of maintenance. You don't have to grease it. You don't have to worry about dirt, water, oil, anything getting in there. So that is going to be a non-serviceable ball joint, but it's completely sealed and waterproof. Okay, next is going to be, let's say, your camber and caster adjustment.
Yep.
Okay, so first thing I'll show you is you'll remove this locking plate, and I'll explain it in a bit. But what you'll do, without the vehicle's weight being on the wheels, you'll lift it, you'll crack this jam nut loose, and from the front, you'll put a socket and a wrench, and you'll just either turn clockwise or counterclockwise, and that will either increase the length or decrease the length, and that'll adjust your caster or your camber. This piece right here was important to us because not everybody does their alignments at home. Some people take it to shops, probably most people take it to shops. And what we want to do is something that you can easily visually reference to make sure that, one, you want to make sure your jam nut's locked, but even if it came loose or the alignment shop didn't put it on correctly, at least you have this locking mechanism which will bolt into your factory control arm, or sorry, our control arm, and that stops that from turning. So even if this is loose, that cannot come undone and you won't lose your alignments back.
Actually, yeah, a good second safety feature.
Absolutely.
And the alignment guys are going to really appreciate that versus trying to fight on that, getting that control
right.
and adjust it.
And when after you install this, that locks out that section. So this will also come with these lockouts that you'll bolt in place. They're basically rectangular washers.
Right. And what about the ball joint?
Ball joints, serviceable ball joint, so you can grease it, but it is also the same factory OE bolt pattern. So you don't need to come to us for purchasing a proprietary ball joint. You can source this from anywhere. We give you our recommendation and instructions, but any general replacement should work.
Okay, let's talk about the lower control arm. This thing's pretty robust. The advantages of it?
Okay, well, actually, I can touch on both. So both arms are forged aluminum. We do that, one, for rigidity, strength, and also cost, because a tubular control arm requires a large jig, all this welding that comes along with it. Nothing wrong with that. The tubular arms and welded arms have been around for a long time. But if we can pay for the tooling up front and then pass the cost savings on to the customer, we also don't have to worry about, say, a weld not having enough penetration. Right. We don't have to worry about a point that's going to want to break, which is all good. All weld points are going to want to do that at some point after a certain amount of use. So that's the biggest feature from going to forge. Yes, you save some weight, but it's about the strength and the consistency in production.
How about the bump stop?
Okay, so our bump stop, we use the factory location for the bump stop. That's important to us because the frame's designed to take force there. It's not designed to take it on the shock absorber. You'll notice on your OE shock or even any aftermarket drop kit, it's not going to have a bump stop there because the frame wasn't intended to take load there. That goes into the coil pocket. Coil pocket's designed to take load from the coil spring, but not from the bump stop. So it was important for us to incorporate the bump stop where it originally was intended.
Factory ball joint?
Yes, same concept. We didn't want the customer having to come to us for some proprietary ball joint. So this is an OEM style ball joint. You can replace it. Same thing with the rubber bushings. This is a simple press in, press out. You can get your replacements online or at your local auto parts store.
Do these hang down any lower or change the track width of from the factory?
So they don't change the factory track width. They're the same dimension from here to here. We added a few other features before I touch on the hanging lower. This is already how much most customers had trimmed their control arms in the past, because they were always too wide, right? And you turn your wheel and you run into things. So we narrowed this whole section as much as you would have back then, but you don't have to do any of that reinforcement. As for it hanging lower, it hangs at the very the lowest portion of it is where the OE is. That was a concern of ours. But one thing we noticed with OE is that if you run anything smaller than, let's say, a 16 or 17-inch wheel, if you were to get a flat, you're going to run on that lower control arm. So we would recommend that you don't run anything lower than an 18, but I would make that same recommendation on an OE control arm as well. And that's strictly just for that worst case scenario. When you get a flat, is my control arm going to drag on the ground? Yes. And that was the same for OE and this, and that's going to be for any lower control arm.
And the advantage of sticking to the factory track width?
Advantages are mostly wheel fitment. That's going to be for, depending on, I think it goes for both people. The guys that want to run 315s up front and the guys that just want to run a 9-inch wide tire with this particular offset that doesn't suck in the wheel very much. So those are the advantages.
Joseph, what does this control arm work with? I noticed the 2 mounts right here, not for a coil spring.
Right, so it doesn't work with your factory coil spring or even a lowering coil spring. What it's designed to do is accept this bushing. And this bushing that we use is for our coilover conversion for the OBS. So these two things are going to come together. We chose to use this rubber bushing for similar reasons to why we wanted to seal this joint, is that we don't want you to have to do any maintenance to it. It's the same rubber bushing that we use in the current generation Silverado. So it's OE tested, high mileage, it's going to last. You're not going to have to worry about noises, squeaking, any of that harshness that comes with it, vibration. And that's really helpful on an older truck like the OBS. So we tried to put rubber where we could, where it made sense, and we removed it where it just didn't make sense.
So what are the options with the upper control arm? What kind of uses can you use it with on top of with the coilover setup for the OBS?
Okay, so both control arms, the coilover conversion with the lower arm and the upper arm, that's going to work with any spindle, including OE, that works for the OBS. So that's going to be our 24, 2500, and including our new 3-inch drop spindle. Also, any competitor spindle that's designed for the OBS, that'll work. If it works with your OEM system, it's going to work with these control arms. Now, the upper control arm, you don't need to feel like you need a drop spindle. If you're just with a coil spring drop and you're just looking to update your OBS because your bushings or your joints or your ball joint's bad, you can use this on an OE truck or one with a coil spring drop.
Do you have to install the bracket with the arm?
Yes, you do. Okay. You do have to install it, and there's some minor cutting involved. But I mean, most fender liners are already clearanced, but the instructions reference what you have to do, and that's because we want that mechanical advantage, that increase in anti-dive. It makes a huge change in just driving characteristics. It doesn't make it stiffer, doesn't make it uncomfortable. It actually makes it feel safer, more controlled.
Steering as well.
Yes, steering, it increases because you're losing that roll and you're losing that dive.
Right.
Yeah, and also there's exclusive alignment instructions. So if you do end up going to a shop, there's part of the instructions that you can just give the alignment shop. That way it explains this to them and it's easier for them to adjust.
Okay, let's talk about the coilover. Why does this have 2 different springs in it? What is the advantage of that?
Sure. So you have your main spring. This is what your vehicle rides on. And this is your tender spring or helper spring. So what this does is when the vehicle's at full droop or while you're adjusting the vehicle, this keeps tension on the mainspring so it's not rattling or falling loose. Right. With a lot of coilovers, specifically lowering coilovers, and it doesn't just go for us, it goes for any lowering coilover. If you don't have a tender or helper, this spring will rattle and it will want to fall out of its original location. Some people zip tie it and all these other things, but with a tender spring, you don't have to do that. It stays where it's supposed to be. Keep support on the adapter itself.
So I see this comes with a spacer. How does this work in conjunction with the coilover in the pocket?
Okay, so this, and you'll also notice it says outside on it. So this means just we want this to face the outside towards the wheel. The instructions will specify. It also has a molded in piece here to help align it and clock it for you. But what this does, it allows us to adapt the mainspring to the factory pocket. So you don't have to do any cutting, any modification, no welding. There's nothing you have to do. This goes to your frame. Mainspring goes right on right into it, and the tender spring keeps tension on it. Now, what I can also show you is, so this is going to work like your standard replacement shock absorber or one of our Street Performance nitro drops. You're just going to undo your jam nuts, bushing sandwiches the frame in the factory location. We're going to use our 28 millimeter piston rod.
Say that's a large one. Yeah.
Yes, we have to use that and the large body because the forces that the OBS needs, it has a very high motion ratio. So what that means is, this isn't exact, but just for reference, is if the wheel moves an inch, then the shock moves about 0.5 of an inch. So that mechanical leverage means this has to make twice as much power to control what the wheel is generating to it, just because of that ratio. And so you can only do that with large pistons and large piston rods. And then you need the large body to control all that heat. All right, so all your adjustments, like your height adjustments, are all going to be done from this single spring perch. This was a new design for us because this spring rate, the spring rate required for the OBS, your factory spring rate's about, I think, 900 or 800 pounds. Yep. You're going to need about 1,100 pound spring to support that vehicle, especially in the lowered range, and especially if you're one of those guys that wants to autocross it and or just do some spirited driving. This spring is not so heavy though that it's going to be uncomfortable. It is a touch above factory with the load carrying capability. It's not going to be just bouncing down the road or too stiff that you can't take people out in it.
What about the height adjustability of this one?
Oh, so that's going to be done with your spring perch. So that spring perch, you're just going to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise, and that's what's going to give you your height adjustment. So that starts from a 1-inch drop down to a 3-inch drop. So when paired with our 3-inch spindle, you can do a 6.
Is this adjustable at all?
No, it doesn't have any sort of adjustment. The rebound and compression settings that we have is right where I would want it if I was going to make a performance OBS that was still comfortable for the street. Yeah, so it's nothing that is going to irritate you, but it's nothing that's going to be compromised if you want to autocross it or take it to the track. Because we're talking about 2 different shock speeds. Right. On the street, the shock's not moving very fast. There's some occurrences like ruts, potholes, but it's the shock speed itself is not moving very fast. That's not relative to the speed of the car. So when you're operating at those, I can tune the shock for that. When you're autocrossing, the shock speeds are higher. We tune those forces for that. So they're 2 different forces.
Can this also be transferred over to any of the SUVs as well?
Yes, so we're working on that right now. The goal is to make sure that this spring and hydraulic combo works on the Tahoe and the Suburban.
Thank you, Joseph, for answering some of the questions about the coilovers, upper control arm, and lower controllers. Questions people may have. Any other questions? Please comment below.